Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of Mystic Space Podcast. So in today's episode, we're going to go into healing and what does healing mean? In this episode, I'm going to be mostly talking about mental, our personalities, our mental health, things like that. When I'm talking about healing, not physical healing. If you want to hear a little bit more about physical healing, I just spoke about that on my last episode. So what is healing? Because I know in the spiritual community, we all hear about healing yourself, self-love healing, inner child healing, and all these things like shadow work to help you heal. I feel like sometimes we need to break things down a little bit. What is healing? What does healing really truly mean? So yes, it can be like a self-discovery, self-love. These are all just other terms that can be used. Self-empowerment, healing your inner child. All of these things are kind of the same. They're just different words for the same thing. For me, healing means that you take your power back and you heal parts of you that were not truly a part of you, if that makes sense. So if you have anxiety, if you're easily triggered, if you're angry easily, if you're this and you're that, those are personality traits that you have picked up along the way. They don't define who you are. Every single human being on this earth has been programmed. It can be programmed in a positive or a negative way. It doesn't matter. We've all been programmed. We've all been conditioned a certain way, depending on our environment and the people who grew us up, the people who helped shape us, especially within the first 5 to 7 years of our lives. It is so important because that's when we're truly, really building the foundations of who we are. If you have negative self-talk, if you're a very negative person, if you're very doubtful, whatever it is, these are all traits that you picked up based on your environment, whether it was your parents and they were modeling that to you by being that themselves and you watching them, because kids learn everything. They're like sponges. They will literally pick up absolutely everything. They learn your behaviors and everything like that. So even if you're not directly teaching them to be negative, them watching you be negative is teaching them to be negative. It's no different with you. All your habits that you have, probably the things that you're even into, have all been shaped because of your surroundings from when you were born. I see this so often. If a parent is very cautious, don't do that, don't touch that. Oh, I don't know about that bug. I don't know about this. Oh, be careful. Their child picks up on that and then they end up becoming like that. And I know a lot of people don't like to be compared to their parents. And I'm not saying that you're exactly like them, but you may have picked up a lot of the fundamental bases of your personality from them. It might not be that you turn out exactly like them. And this is something that I'm going to cover a little bit later. But if you're not a confident person, it might be because you were shaped that way. Your parents probably weren't very confident people. Or another thing that also shapes you, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot in here, is trauma. So you might have been a confident person and then something happened. Say you were embarrassed at a school play or something like that, and that broke you down, or someone bullied you or something happened and you lost confidence. And over time, that impacts you. It doesn't just impact you necessarily then and there when that trauma happens, because that trauma creates a root, a little point in your brain, and from that point onwards you are changed, you are different. And it's not something we consciously choose, it's literally how our brain works. Now, trauma, I know a lot of people talk about trauma in the healing community, in the spiritual community, whatever it is, and people hear the word trauma and they think that necessarily means it has to be something large, like sexual assault or a death or something like that, which, yes, of course, that also causes trauma. However, trauma can be really simple and little, and a lot of people won't even recognize it being trauma. You just have to think of your brain like a machine, right? When you hit yourself physically, you bruise. It's trauma to your body. Well, mental things are trauma to our brains. So if you got embarrassed, that created trauma in your brain. So the number one thing I think is important to healing is to understand where your trauma comes from. Now, that doesn't always need to happen, because I think sometimes we can get stuck in this healing trap, and every single time an emotion comes up or an anxiety comes up, we have to sit there and try to dig and go, oh, well, did it happen in my childhood? What happened what happened exactly to make me like this? And we don't necessarily always have to find the exact point in time or the exact thing that happened for us to heal from it, it can definitely help. And the reason why it helps is because I believe it makes you realize and recognize that it is not from you. So when you realize you have anxiety exactly at that moment and you realize, oh, that anxiety stems from this, that doesn't necessarily make you heal it. But it can help you understand that, okay, the reason why I'm feeling this way is not necessarily because of me, but it's because this thing happened to me, or it's because this is the way my body reacted to this thing happening external to me, because that's what's happening. Your brain is trying to always keep you safe. So it will create things like anxiety for you so that it keeps you safe and that you don't put yourself in those same situations again, because it's trying to keep you safe. So understanding that the trauma isn't a part of you, it's not who you are, I think helps people be able to step back, and it helped me be able to step back so that I could recognize and heal that, to accept it and let it go, to transmute it, to be better than that, to reprogram my mind, to create a new pathway, to do something to be different. And I just want to say that accepting it and letting go doesn't necessarily mean that you're okay with what happened or that you were okay with how you were treated. It's definitely not okay. However, it's about recognizing where you are now. Are you okay now? And are you able to move forward? Do you want to move forward? Because I think that's a very important aspect when you're going through a healing journey. You need to want to be better. You need to want to change. And that can honestly be one of the hardest parts, because we kind of get stuck in victim mentality and, oh, well, this is just how I am. And I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper in another episode about victim mentality. But wanting to change is actually probably one of the hardest things, because you have to recognize faults within yourself. And that's not always easy to do. But I think it's also really important to not put blame or guilt onto yourself for it. Like, oh, I'm such a shit person because I get easily angry. It's not your fault, but the power is in you recognizing that you can change that now. You can be different now. And that's what healing is. It's about recognizing, okay, I was like this because of A, B, and C. However, now I want to be like XYZ. I want to be different. I want to be more than what happened to me. I want to become more than just what was programmed in me. I want to move forward. I want to transcend past my trauma, because that's what healing is empowering yourself to realize that you can be whoever it is that you want to be. This is why I say one of the things we need to do is unlearn. So we're not actually teaching ourselves anything new. We're actually unlearning everything we learned. We're learning all our behaviors, our traits, our responses, everything. We're unlearning to have abandonment issues or codependency issues or whatever it is. We're unlearning those things. We're going into our brain and we're going, you know what? We don't actually like the way that this little thing is working together. We don't like how these two neurons are connecting, and when somebody says this, that means they're abandoning me. And we also don't have to have the same emotional reaction. And I'm not saying that we need to suppress our emotions or anything like that, because that is definitely not going to help you. But recognizing when these emotions come up and recognizing that it is a reaction is so powerful in helping you heal and move forward through that. So when you realize and recognize how you've been and then you want to be different, doing that creates space. In that space is where we put the different. Okay, so when you go into your healing journey and you go, I am done with being easily angry, or I am done with having anxiety, and you work through what is causing this anxiety, what is causing you to get easily angry, what is causing you to react this way, you are creating a blank space to put in new things. It's like you kind of take out the trash first before you put new stuff in, right? Otherwise, you just got a bin overfilling. And in a way, this can be fun and empowering, as much it is definitely very difficult, because you have to face aspects of yourself that up until now you might not have really wanted to face. Like, why are you easily angered? That might bring up a lot of trauma for you if you had a very traumatic household, if you had a lot of trauma as a child. You might have been abused emotionally, physically, whatever. So the healing journey is definitely not all love and light, and it's not a happy road. It's definitely a very difficult road. However, it can be fun if you look at it at the aspect of like, I can create whoever I want to be now, right? I don't have to be whoever society taught me to be. I don't have to be whoever my parents taught me to be. I don't have to be or do anything besides what I truly actually want to do. And for a lot of people, we might not even realize that. Like, a lot of people just live their lives, they're born and they do everything that they think they're meant to do, and then they die. And a lot of people don't even wake up to the fact that they didn't even get to live a life that they wanted to live. That's why so many people, when they're in their deathbed or very old and knowing that their time is coming, have so many regrets because they realize that they never lived their lives how they truly wanted it to, because everybody was just being a product of their environment. Now, of course, this is not easy. This doesn't just happen overnight. I believe that we never get truly healed. There's not like this end goal that you reach that's like, I'm 100% healed and that's it. Like, I don't ever need to do any more work on myself. I honestly just don't believe that we get there, because I think we're humans. We have so much stuff going on, and I feel like we're also limitless. Like, there's so much potential. There's always something that we can go deeper within ourselves for. There's always some way that we can improve. There's always something that we can do. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to spend your whole life and your whole time thinking that you need to heal, because I think that's another bad thing about, the spiritual community online I've seen is like, you got to do shadow work, you got to do the healing, you got to do this, you got to do that. And honestly, it can get too much. It can make people become extremely depressed because you're constantly bringing up all of these traumas, which is good if you know how to let them go and move through it. But unfortunately, a lot of people are just bringing up all this trauma constantly, kind of like in talk therapy. When you go see a therapist, you're just talking about the trauma. Most times you don't actually learn to work through the trauma or overcome that trauma. You're just bringing it up. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is our brains are fucking powerful. Our brain doesn't actually know the difference between reality and our thoughts. So when we are thinking something, our brain is reliving it, which means our body is reliving it, because our brain and our body is connected. So when one thing starts, the other thing starts. That's why if you can think of a really traumatic event, you might start feeling bad again. You might have anxiety that comes up, or you might start feeling angry or tense or something like that. That's because your brain thinks you're going through it then and there. So unfortunately, if you're just constantly bringing up trauma, but not actually working through it and moving past it, sometimes you might actually send yourself backwards on your healing journey. And so one thing that I say is that the shadow work or the healing doesn't always necessarily happen while you're meditating or while you're journaling or while you're even doing shadow work. It's when circumstances come up in your reality and you choose to respond a different way. So let's just say you've gotten really angry about something. Your normal reaction is to get fired up. You might start yelling, you might get angry, you might storm off or whatever it is. Healing comes when in that moment, something kind of just clicks in your head and goes, I could act differently right now. And then you choose to act differently. I'm not saying that that will make your anger go away, but you can choose to respond instead of react and go, okay, you know what? I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I'm going to go do something that I know will calm me down, or I'm going to go do something where I can move through this emotion, because feeling our emotion is extremely helpful and necessary when we're healing. A lot of the times, that's really what we really need to do, because we were probably not allowed to feel that emotion when it came up, or we didn't just allow ourselves to feel it fully because of the world that we live in, the society that we live in, right? Usually some traumatic events happen and we need time. Say someone passes, it usually takes a very long time that someone needs just to solidly grieve first. That doesn't mean that they stop grieving after. But if you're just forced to go back into work the next day, then you've never really given yourself the time to actually feel the emotions of grief. Now imagine you're a child and you live in an abusive household, even if it's not physically, even if it's just emotionally, and you feel unsafe as a child, You are never given that time, and nobody shows you how to actually deal with your emotions. So unfortunately, you've just picked up doing what everyone else around you does to deal with your emotions, because you were never taught a healthy way to deal with your emotions. Because unfortunately, your parents might have not been emotionally available, and they might not have understood your needs, or you might not have even had parents, or whatever the case may be, that caused a lot of trauma in your childhood that you did not get to feel and move through. So healing is about literally letting yourself feel emotions that you never got to feel before. It's about letting yourself just be a human. You know, when you hurt yourself as a kid and you cry because it hurts, and most people tell you to stop crying, that's not very helpful, because you're not feeling like, damn, this really sucks. No one's saying that you need to drag on about a little paper cut for a week. But if it hurts, and you're allowed to express that. But a lot of people might have shut you down because, unfortunately, that's just the society we live in. We're not really taught about the emotional needs of a human, let alone a child. So healing gives you that space. And that's why a lot of people talk about inner child healing, because you're healing that aspect within yourself that never got to heal, that never got to be treated the way it deserved, that never had the right environment to grow, that never had the right space to be taught how to deal with these emotions. And you're healing all the aspects of you that are not a part of you. That's why when they say you're doing inner child healing, you're healing that aspect of you so that you can be your inner child, so that that little child of you that had all the hopes and the dreams and everything that they wanted in life, their love for life and everything, before it got taken away from them, you're allowing that child to grow up within you in a healthy way, in a more aligned way. So when you're doing inner child healing, you're not like literally healing some inner child inside you physically. It's the aspects of you that you are carrying from a child that you are healing. A lot of people will recognize their first time to need to heal a lot is in a romantic relationship, because their version of love might have been skewed depending on how their household was. If you had parents fighting constantly, or if one parent was absent and you didn't even get to see what love was, if you had no role models around you to show you what love was, or if your role models around you were toxic and had a lot of issues of themselves, then that is what you were taught as a child is love. So then when you do get into a relationship later, a lot of people have conflicts and issues because they're actually not taught what real love is. They're not shown what real love is. They're not shown how to deal with anything when it comes up, maybe conflict. So if you have an issue with your partner, you might not be good at communicating that with them. You might not be able to just walk up to your partner and be like, hey, I really don't like when you do this, or, you know, because of my insecurities in my past and I've been cheated on, I am insecure when you go out with your friends and you don't text me for the whole night. That really triggers me. But a lot of people are not able to have these communications, again, because it was how they were taught to communicate. It was literally how they were taught. It was how they were programmed. So now instead of being able to express those feelings, they might bottle them up, or they might suppress them and then get really angry, or they might just snap at them later when they come home and go, well, you didn't text me all night, or whatever it is. It's because people were not actually taught how to deal with their emotions. They were not taught how to deal with conflicts, and those two things are really important in a relationship. So healing can mean that you learn how to communicate your needs better, and also to have boundaries for yourself, because again, you might not have been taught what boundaries are, why they're important. A lot of parents unfortunately crossed a lot of our boundaries and didn't respect us. And now as adults, we might not understand or respect other people's boundaries, and we might not be able to have our own and set our own. So then instead of getting into a relationship and saying, hey, I don't accept A, B, and C, they get into the relationship and then they just create chaos because they're actually not really happy, but they don't know how to express that and they don't even recognize that. People won't even realize that a lot of relationships, they're not actually in love, but they're actually just very codependent or very attached to that person or attached to the idea of that person or of love. So healing means discovering who it is that you truly are as a person, so that you also know what you want out of life and out of others, whether it's a romantic relationship or not. Healing means putting yourself first. It means discovering what it is that you truly want and going after it in all aspects of life. Because you might not have been able to do that in the past. You might have been told that you're not enough, your dreams are not valid, they're not going to happen. You've probably been diminished in some sort of a way. So healing gives you your power back. It's literally taking your fucking power back from all these people who took it from you, from when you were born, from your parents, from society, from traumas, from bullies, from friends, from whatever it was. And it's saying, you know what? That shit happened. It sucked, but it's not who I am now, and it's not who I'm going to be. So for me, healing means becoming the best version of yourself, becoming who it is that you truly want to be. It is becoming more aligned with your soul, with your purpose in life, the whole reason why you're here. You're not just existing. You're not just becoming a product of your environment, because a lot of people don't realize that they're just existing and not really living. And I think this is why, is because they don't have the awareness to heal. They don't have that awareness to recognize that they've just been a product of their environment and they're not having to be the way they are now. Their life doesn't have to be the way it is. Healing means having fulfillment in your life, finding peace. It doesn't mean that you're happy 24/7 and everything's perfect and all love and light. No, it means that you are able to sit in peace. When bad shit happens, it happens, you feel it, you move through it. It means overcoming your past. It means overcoming your anxieties. It means overcoming your trauma and being who you really want to be and thriving in life and feeling fulfilled and happy and joyful or whatever it is that is important to you. It's about chasing your dreams and expressing yourself exactly how you want to express yourself without the fear of judgment and everything like that. Again, all these past traumas that have been holding you back. Healing is about stopping yourself from holding you back. Healing is recognizing that you have been holding yourself back and that you are no longer going to do it. It means when difficult times come up and difficult emotions come up, or when you get triggered, you are able to move through them in a much healthier way, in a way that's more aligned to you and beneficial for your life. It doesn't mean that we never get triggered or nothing bad ever happens. It's that I'm able to move through it now in a much healthier way, in a place where I am now conscious and aware and able to choose to respond rather than react. Healing is about walking the walk, not just talking the talk. That's why, you're bringing up all that trauma and recognizing where it's all coming from in the healing journey and doing all like the shadow work and everything like that. But also remembering not to get stuck in that point, not to get stuck in the talking about it all, and to take that leap of faith and to start acting different, to start walking that walk. Because yes, you can recognize where that trauma came from, that little pinpoint, exactly that little moment in time that happened that caused that trauma or that created you to be that way. But change happens when you choose to be different, when you go beyond that. And that's when I think real healing happens, is when you start to feel different, when you start to act different, when you start to respond instead of react, when you feel just more at peace. And again, this is not like some end goal that you get to. Like, it doesn't just stop. There's just always more that we can dive deeper within ourselves. But as somebody who came from having severe anxiety, where it was hard for me to leave my house, I was having anxiety attacks at work. I would be anxious about all these things. I was extremely depressed and suicidal. I have completely flipped my life around now, and that's because of my healing journey. And I still have aspects of me that I'm looking in and I'm diving deeper in and I'm still learning about, and new things come up and I'll get triggered and I'll be like, wow, okay, I feel that way. Okay, I understand why this is coming from. Okay, let's move through that. So if you're on a self-love, self-discovery, healing journey, whatever it is, spiritual awakening, try not to be too hard on yourself, because it's a really tough road, to go into your mind and to reprogram your mind, that's really hard work. It doesn't happen overnight, and it does take a lot of reflection and a lot of time and a lot of space and a lot of energy, which is why a lot of people usually tend to isolate while they're doing this, while they're on this healing journey, because it's exhausting and it takes up a lot of your time. So if you're on this journey, please be kind to yourself. Try to find community, like-minded people. That always helps, because we're not meant to be doing this alone. As much as I know that we want to isolate, it's also good to still have some people along the journey with us, because there's a lot of people who have gone through what you're going through, not necessarily exactly, right? Because everyone has completely different trauma. Even if you have the exact same trauma, let's just say a sexual assault, it's completely different. Every single person is completely different. The trauma, the way it happened, the way it changed their brain chemistry, the way they react now, everything like that. Every single case is so different. I think that's a beautiful thing about us humans, because we are so different, and no two people can be exactly the same. Even if you go through the exact same thing, even if you were, siblings in the same household, those two siblings could still be completely different because of how their brain reacted to the trauma. So please be kind to yourself. Please reach out, and just remember that you're not in this alone, and remember your fucking power, because you've got this. Anyway, I'll see you in my next episode. Blessings. I love you.